Sorry. Yes, perhaps I will stand just because everybody is so dynamic in this conference. Yes, as 6 years ago, I started on this incredible journey because IEEE is the largest engineering organization on earth, 420,000 engineers. And they said, we need a standard process for companies to build ethical systems. All those problems that we've just heard about on stage. And we set out, and it's going to be an ISO standard by the end of the year, where we develop with companies and stakeholders a value model for them, trying to understand what values should be driving their innovation and what values need to be protected by the technology. And most important, once we have identified the values, we have a process for putting it into the system. So we have system requirements at the end of the day, and then the developers, know exactly what to do so that hate speech, privacy, autonomy problems, ownership problems, and all of that, you can control it with the technology. Just for a second to catch up on what the ladies just said, an AI can recognize that there is hate speech in a virtual room or in a news group. And then they can immediately block those people who are doing it. It can be technically done, so let's work on that. So I hope very much that this is going to work, and this is, an example probably, perhaps to give you another traction of this, because in the middle of this 6 years, we did case studies and so on, and what we learned was that, ethical, first model process for ethical engineering, it's not about morals really. Values is about what gives meaning to the world, what we love. And as we run the case study, we see, wow, we discover so much that technology can do for the good. And out of this compliance and process work, it turned out that value-based engineering is really something positive for companies. Just one example. Ownership. Did you ever think that ownership is something very important for us as a value? But the digital world is all about sharing and not owning anymore. If I put that, for example, if I take it and I think about automotive, because Ms. Horstmeier and myself will in a minute talk about cars here, what we discovered is that value-based engineering finds that ownership is important for car drivers, and that means, though, that how would you have to need to design a car that you own? It means that perhaps the car needs to be open source. Perhaps the car needs to have modules that people can exchange with repair garage service where they want to go. And suddenly you are in a different world, and whilst perhaps open source was a threat for a lot of people in traditional companies, suddenly as owning a car is really an important message for a car manufacturer, suddenly open source becomes not a threat, but a mission. And this is essentially what value-based engineering is all about. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, what does it have to do with leadership?
It's bold, if you decide that you're not believing in the sharing story, which is a huge story in the tech industry, and you say, no, I will pursue ownership, that's very courageous. What's even more courageous is to say, and by the way, I'm going to embrace open source. Wow. And then you have to sort out all the little control issues and have the courage to put technology in the hands of people, which is extremely courageous from a technological perspective. You go out of this hype story and say, oh, everybody believes that sharing is the new mobility concept. So leadership is not only about protecting people responsibly against the things that can go wrong, but also to find our mission for leveraging the potential of technology for the good. The sub-slogan is also technology for humanity. And it means to go away from what the tech industry wants, you know.
And tell me, why did it took 5 years to develop it?
Because an international standard, you have people from all around the world, you have 30 people participating in the group, 100 people have to sign that they think the standard is good. You have so much negotiations going on until you have the final text that you just can't do it any quicker.
And what's going on with the text now?
What?
Who is reading the text? What's going on with this? How is the development further?
Yeah, we are starting. The standard is just there. ISO has agreed to embrace it. We are now starting to work with the first companies who want to try it out. UNICEF in Africa tried it out for an African talent platform.
Sarah Spiekermann, Professor Spiekermann, thank you for this. And now we have a perspective from the inside of a corporation. I'm proud to call on to first time, no, not the first time, to DLD stage, my friend, my close friend, I have to say, Ilka Horstmeier, member of the board of management at BMW. Responsible for human resources and labor, which means responsibility for more than 100,000 people, globally. Ilka, you had so many experiences, ground experiences. I visited once Dingolfing, the heart of the
European production of BMW. I can help you.
The heart of the European production of BMWs. Not least during your 7 years leading the BMW Group's engine production and plant Dingolfing with about 18,000 employees. I mean, this is really from the basic on responsible leadership, which you explored at the assembly lines, explored at the board of directors or board of the wherever. So what is responsible leadership for you? You want to sit or you want also to...
I can stand, I can sit, no matter what you want.
What you want best.
Well, thank you, Steffi, for inviting me to the DLD. It's my second time. It's great to see you all here. Thank you for coming and listening. What you were asking me is what's all about transformation. And I truly believe, because I've led a lot of people in BMW lately, of course, I'm responsible for the 140,000 people at BMW.
140,000
for the people in Dingolfing. And I think for me, it was always important that people are in the center of transformation, and if you don't take your people with, then you have a problem. And leadership is driving transformation. So we as a leader are in a responsible position at these times. And I think you chose the motto of the DLD in a perfect way, because reality rules. And what does it mean for BMW at the moment and for the whole industry? It means that we are running a threefold of 3 crises at the moment. We have the Ukrainian war with all the impact and all the horrible pictures we see, which is touching not only our business, but also our people. The second thing is, of course, we have a chip crisis and we have COVID in China, and everything is overlapping at the moment, so we have to tackle this. At the same time, we are in the biggest transformation of our industry, driving digitalization and sustainability, because we truly believe that there will be no freedom of individual mobility if we don't go that path. But going a sustainable path in the car industry doesn't mean just changing combustion engines into electrical engines. I think that's far too short. We have to think, and we have to rethink the whole value chain of a car, starting from the very beginning of which raw materials you use, is the material you use recyclable or not, and then, of course,
Can you
reduce
repeat this? You have to rethink, because it's so important.
We have to rethink the whole value chain, because people are just thinking that an electrical car driving on the street, no matter where the electricity comes from, if it's green or anything else, is sustainable. It's not. So BMW is convinced that we have to rethink the whole thing. And the second thing is, of course, with regard to digitalization, I think Sarah knows that, people want to have an always fresh car. And people want to have that feeling that it's tech magic, but at the same time, human-centric. So what does this all mean for leaders at BMW and for leaders in the industry at the moment? For me, it means three things. First hand, people need to be able, or leaders need to be able to have a two-handed approach to the topics, because on one hand, they have to manage the current situation, they have to manage, at the moment, 3 crises, and it's stressful. I mean, look at our purchasing people, they are really under stress at the moment. At the same time, they have to think about supply chains in the future, about chip design, and how we can reduce raw material, for example, in our vehicles in the future. So it's stressful. You have to be, at the one hand, managing crisis. On the other hand, you have to shape the future. And this is not easy for leaders. The second thing, which I'm deeply convinced in, that our leaders need to withstand and resolve conflicting priorities. It's not about sustainability or profit. It's not about tech magic or human-centric or centricity. It's both. And I think finding solutions to cope with both, the companies who will do that, who will be the winners of the transformation. And the third thing, what leaders have to do in these times, is they have to show empathy. If you look in the faces of many people after 2 years of COVID, where they couldn't really or didn't really know what was happening, how could they treat this? They bought toilet paper because they didn't know what to do. Now, after 2 years of COVID, the whole stress with COVID, not knowing if families are staying healthy, etc., now we have a war just around the corner in Europe. And what can you do as a leader in a company? You have to show empathy. You have to talk to people. You have to take them with all their fears and with all their fears about whatever the safety situation in Europe is, but also, of course, with regard to the company's future in these transformative times. And the last thing, Steffi, the last thing is that as a leader, you need to have a very strong focus on people, because transformation is transforming people. And people doesn't only mean that we are talking about our employees, but we are talking about customers, clients, and we are talking about the society as a whole. So these three things, I think, are very important with regard to our role in the transformation.
Please have a seat. Let's do some...
I don't know if you agree, but...
Go here. Yeah, okay. So, my dear friends, Sarah, you spoke about courage.
Yeah.
Courage, what it takes for being a responsible leader. How do you define courage? As a professor for ethics.
Courage is a virtue, yeah? And it shows at the moment where my passion, virtue shows where my passion goes in the other direction. So the virtue of courage comes when I would actually have an inner resistance to do something. When perhaps everybody marches in a different direction. When a lot of people in my group think differently, but I know that there is the right path to go. It's that in that moment it is courageous to follow my informed instincts. So it's the moment where you pass that threshold of inner resistance and following the herd. You lead the herd. That's leadership and that's courage.
Thank you, Sarah. And Ilka, I mean, I think it's extremely difficult to speak to the 140,000 employees, to take them with your path. How do you do it, and what is courage for you?
I think courage for me is exactly what I said earlier. Is you have to cope with conflicting priorities. And I think if you look at digitalization in our processes, there's a lot of fear that at the end of the day, there will be maybe deserted factories in our production network. So I think we have to give people an opportunity to understand what we think about digitalization, what we want to really change with digitalization in the company, how it can help and benefit the employees to make the world more economic, for example, to make processes better in quality. And at the end of the day, I think with all the demographics the demography coming up and the shortage of workforce in the future, I think there's also a big chance with digitalization to get rid of jobs which are not being done in the future by people. I mean, look for example, in the truck industry and in the logistics industry, I think if there will be no autonomous driving in the future for trucks, I think there will be no goods transported in the future because there will be no people who want to do that job. So I think looking at our people and taking them with, you have to explain them where you're heading. The same example is for electromobility. Of course, my people in production, when I was responsible for engine production, they looked at me and said, okay, what is happening when the combustion engine is maybe going down, which is not at the moment because we have good hybrids, but at the end of the day, the electromobility will increase. And our answer is that, first of all, wherever there's something getting down, we'll take the people with, we'll transform them in other jobs and qualify them. We've trained already 50,000 people in electromobility in all stages. That's one thing. The second thing is you have to go deeply into your production system and have to understand how you transform your processes in a way that at the end of the day people get not lost. And that's what we did. We transformed our plants to be able to produce combustion engines and electromobility in one plant. So we can take our experienced people with us on that journey, and there will be no single plants for electromobility, which are increasing, maybe have less capacity or not enough capacity. On the other side, we'll have plants who are going down and people don't know what to do. So I think that is what I think is extremely important for us to take our people with on that journey, and they have to trust you. I think I understood in Dingolfing when I was head of the plant, after 5 weeks, they knew if they could trust me or not.
Good, good. A leader. Now a difficult question. So for some it's easy. Sarah, are you an optimist?
Yes.
Why so?
I'm born like that.
Good. That's a simple question to a simple answer to a simple question. How do you define optimism?
I think it's about seeing the glass half full rather than half empty.
So we have something in common.
Yes, I think so. That's what I mean.
Are you an optimist?
I'm an optimist because I believe there's always a next day. If you don't think you're very happy that day, you think there's always a next day, there's always a next week, a next month, a next year. So you can change every time. And I'm very happy. I'm so optimistic. You know why? Because Sarah and my team, they will work together in the future. Because especially with the tech magic and human centricity, I think there's a lot of questions we have to answer. First of all, our customers, they want tech magicness, yeah? But it's the way how you apply it. It has to really make people more happy. People want to get a new experience. And I think with some of the cars we are bringing now in the market, I think you will feel it. You have a car that helps you to drive even less focused, I would call it. So your assistance systems will help you to be more relaxed when you drive. And then you get a fully different experience with, for example, the screen in the back, or even with some modes in the car, with music, with all these kind of things. And what Sarah touched is quite important. You always have to think about what you're doing. And there have to be some underlying principles, especially when you talk about digitalization, that should guide you as a company. You shouldn't do everything that is possible. And I think exactly at that point, we can work closely together with you, Sarah, and your team to really find out what are the underlying principles we want to apply. Of course, BMW, we say the sovereignty of the owner of the car will remain. Yeah, he should decide what he can do. Of course, privacy is a big issue. Of course, safety is a big issue. Yeah, we don't want to test technology in your hand. We want to test it beforehand and tell you that we have a technology that is really perfect. But there's so much more to explore besides these aspects, and that's the reason why I'm so happy that we met. And we are now cooperating on the value, or the
value-based engineering.
Value-based engineering.
Value-based engineering.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps to say, why is it called engineering and not value-based design or value-sensitive design? Because this is all about engineering. It's about bringing what used to be CSR or marketing bubble into the product, into the processes, into the customer experience. And I wanted to, I was, of course, preparing a little bit for today, and what?
I will have to stop soon.
No more time.
No more time. But say
Okay,
it.
then
One
I
more
say-
sentence.
One more sentence.
Okay, it was a story about self-driving cars, yeah? Because the question is, what is utility for a customer? Utility is that it's not that the car drives by itself. No, that's a technical capability. Relaxation in the car. That's a value. But if you want to be relaxed, do you want to be liable for the last 2 seconds that the car does an accident? No, you don't want that. Either the software quality is up to the standard where you can really trust the car, or you just don't invest yourself into the self-driving car until it's ready. And you don't put like a Tesla, I don't know, I heard, I don't know whether it's allowed to say that, but to sign off users or drivers as guinea pigs and have contracts that are not to sue the company if the self-driving car does an accident, that's certainly not the way forward. That's not responsible and that's not ethical. You have to work towards the whole product, and the quality must be high.
And when you go out of the session, because we are at the end, I just want to give you one thing to think about. It's tech matching and human-centric can go together. If you think about it, you have to have some guiding principles for each and every company, and I think the session before already tackled this. And keep in mind, and that's our motivation, that leadership of the future is not being the best in the world, it's being the best for the world. Thank you.
Best. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.